I'm about to show you one of the most brutal decisions a king has ever made. It's 1191, and this guy, Richard the Lionheart, just captured a city. He has 3,000 prisoners. We're talking soldiers, civilians, even women and children. But instead of trading them, he lines them all up in front of the enemy army and gives a single insane order. Kill them all. This is a real historical event. Was Richard a complete psycho? Or was this a 1,000 IQ move in the craziest war of the Middle Ages? We are going to rewind the clock and find out why a legendary hero did something so unbelievably shocking. Before we begin, if you love uncovering hidden dramatic moments from history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. Okay, so to get why this happened, you need to know the stakes were insanely high. 4 years earlier, the most important city in the world, Jerusalem, was conquered by this absolute legend, Saladin. For the Christian world, holding Jerusalem was like winning the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and the Olympics all at once, so its loss sent them into a complete panic. The Pope called for a new crusade. Think of it like the ultimate comeback tour. Every king felt the pressure, but Richard the Lionheart basically said, "I got this." His one and only mission was to take back Jerusalem. But standing in his way was this giant fortress city, Acre. The Crusaders had already been trying to capture it for a year, and it was a total disaster. They were starving, getting sick, and losing hope. Then, out of nowhere, Richard's giant fleet shows up. For the tired soldiers, this was like watching their favorite streamer join their losing game. They went absolutely wild. He was their last hope. Richard didn't just bring more soldiers. He brought his A-game. This guy had a reputation for being an absolute beast in battle, and he didn't disappoint. It was a total pro-gamer move. In just a few weeks, he completely changed the game. He had his engineers build massive catapults that just started punching holes in the city walls. His expert crossbowmen were like tactical snipers, clearing the walls so defenders couldn't even fight back. Richard and his knights went into overdrive, and the defenders, who were already exhausted, just couldn't keep up. On July 12th, Acre finally surrendered. It was a huge victory, but it unlocked a crazy new challenge. Richard was now in charge of thousands of prisoners, which were basically the ultimate bargaining chips. So they made a deal, and the terms were absolutely insane. Saladin agreed to a massive payout to get his people back. Here's what was on the table. First, 100,000 gold coins, a literal treasure chest. Second, the return of the true cross. This was a legendary Christian relic, like the original Mona Lisa of Christianity, and getting it back would be a gigantic win for the Crusaders. And third, the release of 1,600 Christian prisoners. If Saladin delivered all of that, Richard would free the thousands of prisoners from Acre. A deadline was set. 40 days. The countdown began, and thousands of lives were on the line. But Saladin was a genius, and he started using some serious delaying tactics. He was basically trying to run out the clock. First, he claimed he needed more time to get all that gold together. Okay, fine. Then, he said the true cross was super far away and hard to get. Ugh. And finally, he said he couldn't find all 1,600 Christian prisoners. With every missed deadline and every lame excuse, Richard's army was literally falling apart. It was brutally hot. Diseases like dysentery were spreading like crazy, and his soldiers were dying every single day. Richard was completely stuck, like a race car driver stuck in a pit stop while his opponent pulls away. His army was the engine, and it was overheating. All that amazing momentum he had was just draining away. Richard was in a total bind, and his advisors were giving him conflicting advice. It was like he had 3 terrible doors to choose from. Door number 1, release the prisoners. But that was a terrifying idea. It was like intentionally leveling up the final boss right before you fight him, as thousands of enemy soldiers would just rejoin Saladin's army. Door number 2, sell them as slaves. This sounds insane, but people actually suggested it. The problem? Trying to sell that many people during a war was like trying to empty a lake with a bucket. It just wasn't possible. Door number 3. Keep them locked up. But this was also a disaster. Guarding and feeding thousands of prisoners was like trying to run a marathon while carrying a piano. It used up soldiers and supplies that Richard desperately needed for his push to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, his own army was getting restless. People were whispering that the Lionheart had lost his nerve. He was in an impossible trap with no good way out. The tension was unbearable. So on August 19th, Richard had finally had it. He personally rode over to Saladin's camp for a final showdown. This wasn't a friendly chat. Richard gave him an ultimatum. You have until sunrise tomorrow to deliver the gold, the cross, and the prisoners, or the deal is completely over. According to the Muslim chronicler Baha ad-Din, Saladin, the master negotiator, asked for just 3 more days. Only 72 more hours. But Richard was done with the excuses. He turned his horse around and rode back to his camp. You could tell his mind was already made up. This was it. The next morning, instead of a prisoner exchange, one of the most horrific events of the Crusades happened. Richard's soldiers marched all the prisoners up the hill of Ayadia in plain sight of Saladin's army. He did this on purpose, so they would see everything. Then, the Crusaders lined up, drew their swords, and began. It was a full-blown massacre. Christian sources admit they beheaded around 2,700 people. Muslim sources say it was over 3,000, and that it included women and children. This took hours. It was a slow, methodical, and brutal operation. Saladin's soldiers were so horrified they actually charged to try and stop it. But Richard was ready for them and easily fought them off. By nightfall, the hill was red with blood, and Richard's army was finally free to move. The backlash was immediate and just as brutal. Saladin, who was known for being honorable, was absolutely enraged. He immediately ordered the execution of every Christian prisoner he was holding. The cycle of atrocity just started spiraling out of control. It was as if both sides had taken the rulebook of war and thrown it into a bonfire. Any chance for deals or mercy was completely gone. From this point on, the Third Crusade just turned into a bloody, no-holds-barred war of annihilation where neither side would show mercy. Problem 1. Logistics. The thousands of prisoners were like a giant anchor holding his warship in place. By killing them, his army was free to get back to the main quest. Problem 2. Saladin. This sent a terrifying message. It was a psychological shockwave, showing Saladin that Richard wasn't bluffing and was playing by a different set of rules. Problem 3. His own army. In a dark way, it united his bickering troops. It was like a pack of wolves that suddenly falls in line after the alpha makes a brutal display of dominance, creating a terrifying kind of unity. But the long-term consequences were devastating. From then on, every enemy garrison fought to the death because they'd rather die fighting than surrender to Richard. And his reputation was permanently damaged. Even his own side was horrified. The Lionheart was now also known as a butcher. It was a short-term win for a massive long-term loss. And here is the ultimate plot twist. After all of that, Richard the Lionheart never captured Jerusalem. He got so close he could literally see the city walls, but after more fighting, he signed a truce with Saladin and went home. He failed his main quest. So what's his legacy? It's like a coin with 2 completely different faces. In England and Europe, he's remembered as this legendary chivalrous hero king. But in the entire Muslim world, his name is still synonymous with pure evil and betrayal. He is the king who broke his word and slaughtered thousands. His great rival Saladin died the next year and is remembered as a hero by his people and respected for his honor by many of his enemies. Richard won almost every single battle but lost the final war for Jerusalem. And maybe he lost his own reputation forever. If you can't believe this story is real, then hit that subscribe button right now because we drop insane historical stories every single week. And I have to know what you think, so comment below. Was Richard a genius strategist backed into a corner, or a complete monster? There's no easy answer, so let me know what you think. And share this with a friend who needs to know how crazy the Middle Ages really were. So why did Richard the Lionheart slaughter 3,000 prisoners? It wasn't a random act of rage. It was a cold, brutal calculation. Trapped with no good options, He saw the situation like this. His army was a sinking ship, and the prisoners were the dead weight dragging it under. He chose to throw the weight overboard. He literally did the math and decided that winning the war was more important than the lives of his captives. The massacre at Ayadia wasn't just crazy, it was a strategy. A terrifying strategy that shows how far some leaders will go to win. So the next time you hear the name Lionheart, just remember that unbelievable courage and unbelievable cruelty can come from the exact same person.